Every single day, millions of people open the refrigerator, pull out a plate of leftovers, put it in the microwave, and assume one simple thing: if it gets hot again, it must be safe again. That belief sounds harmless. It feels practical. It saves time, reduces waste, and fits perfectly into busy life. But after the age of 60, that habit can become much more dangerous than most people realize. Because once you get older, food does not just have to taste fine, it has to be handled right. Your body is not always as forgiving as it used to be. Your immune system may respond more slowly. Your stomach acid may not break down harmful bacteria the same way it once did. Your kidneys, liver, and digestive system may be less resilient than they were 20 years ago. So the same reheated meal that gives a younger person mild stomach discomfort can put an older adult in bed for days, or even in the hospital. And that is exactly why today's topic matters. I'm Dr. Olivia Hart, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 common foods you should never reheat casually, carelessly, or more than once, especially after 60. And when I say never, I do not mean I am trying to create panic. I mean, these are the foods people most often mishandle, misunderstand, and trust too much. Some of them are foods almost everybody keeps as leftovers. Some are foods people believe are healthy, safe, and harmless. And one of them is something many older adults eat every single week without thinking twice about it. By the end of this video, you will know which foods deserve extra caution, why age changes the risk, and what to do instead if you still want the convenience of leftovers without the hidden danger. Let me say one important thing before we begin. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. I am not telling you to throw away every leftover meal for the rest of your life. I am telling you that certain foods become risky when they are cooled too slowly, stored too long, reheated unevenly, or reheated again and again. And after 60, those small kitchen mistakes matter more. The CDC warns that adults 65 and older are at increased risk for food poisoning because the body does not recognize and remove harmful germs as effectively with age. In fact, nearly half of older adults with lab-confirmed foodborne infections from major pathogens such as Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria, or E. coli are hospitalized. That is not a small warning. That is a very serious one. CDC. Now here is what makes this so tricky. Food poisoning does not always come from food that smells bad. It does not always come from obviously spoiled food. Often it comes from food that looks completely normal. It may smell fine, it may taste fine, it may even be piping hot, but if it sat in the danger zone too long, cooled badly, or was reheated the wrong way, that heat is not always enough to undo the problem. That is why the real danger is not just the food. It is the false sense of safety. So let's start with food number 1, and this is one of the biggest offenders in the world: rice. Rice looks innocent. It is cheap, filling, easy to cook in large batches, and people reheat it every day. But cooked rice is one of the most commonly mishandled leftovers. The reason is not the rice itself. The reason is what can happen after the rice is cooked and then left sitting out too long before it goes into the fridge. Rice can carry spores from a bacteria called Bacillus cereus. Cooking may kill active bacteria, but spores can survive. Then, if cooked rice sits at room temperature, those spores can wake up, multiply, and produce toxins. And here is the part many people do not know. Reheating may not destroy the toxins once they are formed. So when somebody says, "It's okay, I microwaved it again," that is not always true. This is especially important after 60, because your body may have a harder time fighting the effects of contaminated food. You may become dehydrated faster. You may recover more slowly. And what seems like a simple digestive upset can turn into something much more serious. Rice becomes risky when people cook a large pot, leave it on the counter for hours, then pack it away and reheat it the next day. It also becomes risky when people keep reheating the same container, a little at a time. That repeated warming and cooling creates exactly the kind of environment bacteria love. So if you are over 60, here is the smart rule. Never reheat rice that sat out too long, and never keep reheating rice over and over. If you cook rice, cool it quickly, refrigerate it promptly, use shallow containers, and only reheat the portion you plan to eat once. If you are not sure how long it was out, do not risk it. This is not a dramatic health myth. FoodSafety.gov specifically lists rice and leftovers as common sources linked to Bacillus cereus, and USDA guidance stresses getting leftovers refrigerated within 2 hours and reheating them thoroughly. FoodSafety.gov USDA. And if you think, I've done this all my life and I've been fine, remember this. Risk is not the same as certainty. People often feel fine until the day they are not. Age changes the odds. Food number 2 is chicken. This one surprises people because chicken is seen as a healthy food, lean protein, easy meal prep, great for salads, wraps, soups, and quick dinners. But chicken is only healthy when it is handled safely, and leftovers are where many people get lazy. The biggest problem with reheated chicken is not just dryness or taste, it is uneven heating and time-temperature abuse. In plain English, that means chicken often gets cooled too slowly, stored too long, or reheated in a way that leaves some parts hot and some parts barely warm. That matters because harmful bacteria do not care that the outside is steaming. If the center never gets hot enough, it may still be unsafe. And microwaves are notorious for producing hot spots and cold spots. One bite may be burning, while another bite is only lukewarm. For older adults, that is not a small issue. Chicken is one of the foods most commonly associated with foodborne illness, especially when it is undercooked the first time or mishandled as leftovers. If you already have a weakened immune system, diabetes, kidney disease, or another chronic condition, the consequences can be much worse. Now let me be clear. I am not saying leftover chicken can never be eaten. I am saying you should never reheat chicken carelessly. Never guess, never warm it just enough, never eat it because it smells okay, and never keep one big container in the fridge and scoop from it over and over for several days while reheating random portions badly. If you are going to reheat chicken, it needs to be reheated all the way through to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Not warm, not almost hot, fully reheated. USDA and FoodSafety.gov are very clear on this. Leftovers should be reheated to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and they should be refrigerated within 2 hours after cooking. USDA FoodSafety.gov. And there is another practical point. Chicken also tends to dry out when reheated, which leads many people to stop reheating before it is actually hot enough, because they do not want it to turn rubbery. That is one more reason it becomes risky. People choose texture over temperature. A safer approach is to store chicken in smaller portions, add a little moisture when reheating, cover it, and heat it evenly. Or better yet, eat properly chilled leftover chicken cold in a salad if it was stored safely in the first place. What you do not want is the half-safe, half-hot version people so often settle for. If you are over 60, chicken should not be treated casually. It should be treated precisely. Food number 3 is eggs. Now, eggs confuse people because they seem simple. If it was cooked once, surely it can be cooked again. But eggs can become a problem very quickly when they are left out, stored improperly, or reheated unevenly, especially in dishes like scrambled eggs, omelets, breakfast casseroles, and quiches. Eggs are one of those foods people often keep at room temperature too long without worrying. A breakfast plate sits out after a family meal. A hotel buffet egg dish stays warm for hours. A container of scrambled eggs goes into the fridge late. Then the next morning, someone reheats it and assumes it is fine. That assumption can be dangerous. Eggs can carry salmonella, and once again, age matters here. Older adults are more likely to get seriously sick from contaminated eggs or egg dishes, especially if they were undercooked in the first place or not reheated properly later. The FDA warns that even clean, fresh eggs may contain salmonella, and FoodSafety.gov egg dishes thoroughly and reheating leftovers to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. FDA FoodSafety.gov. Here is why reheated eggs are especially tricky. They change texture fast. They become rubbery, dry, and unpleasant. So just like with chicken, people often underheat them on purpose. They stop the microwave early. They take them out when they are merely warm. They think, that should be good enough. But good enough is not a food safety standard. Another issue is mixed dishes. Eggs are often combined with cheese, milk, meat, and vegetables. That means you are not just reheating eggs. You are reheating a whole package of foods that may all have cooled and stored differently. A breakfast casserole that was not chilled fast enough can become much riskier than people think. So what is the rule here? If you are over 60, never reheat egg dishes that have been sitting out. Never trust buffet eggs that have been held warm too long. Never keep reheating the same egg dish day after day. And never assume eggs are safe just because they were fully cooked once. If you make eggs, the safest option is to eat them fresh. If you store a cooked egg dish, refrigerate it quickly, keep it cold, and reheat it fully once. Hard-boiled eggs are usually a better leftover choice than scrambled eggs because they are simpler to store and easier to judge. But even then, safe timing matters. This is one of those foods where convenience tempts people to take shortcuts. And after 60, shortcuts are exactly what you want to avoid. Food number 4 is potatoes, especially baked potatoes and fried potato leftovers. This one shocks a lot of people because potatoes feel harmless. They are not meat. They are not seafood. They are not one of the foods people usually fear. But potatoes can become a real problem depending on how they are stored. Let's start with baked potatoes wrapped in foil. FoodSafety.gov specifically identifies baked potatoes in aluminum foil as a botulism risk under the wrong conditions. Why? Because foil can create a low oxygen environment. If the potato is left out too long at room temperature, instead of being refrigerated properly, it may allow dangerous bacterial growth. And botulism is not a minor stomach bug. It is a medical emergency. FoodSafety.gov. That means the problem is not just reheating the potato. The problem is reheating a potato that was stored unsafely and assuming heat has fixed everything. This is why baked potatoes are so deceptive. People cook them for dinner, leave the extras wrapped in foil on the counter, then toss them in the fridge later, or reheat them the next day. That is exactly the kind of habit older adults should avoid completely. If a baked potato stayed wrapped in foil and sat out too long, do not reheat it. Do not peel it and salvage it. Do not assume it should be okay. Throw it away. Now let's talk about fried potatoes, hash browns, and roasted potatoes. With these foods, there is another issue: repeated browning. The more starchy foods are browned, crisped, or fried, the more concern there is about compounds like acrylamide. A recent 2026 food chemistry paper, indexed on PubMed, found that some reheating methods increased acrylamide formation in reheated hash browns, especially with certain heating conditions. That does not mean one reheated potato is poison, but it does support a cautious takeaway. Repeatedly browning or re-crisping potato foods is not the best habit, especially when these foods are reheated aggressively. PubMed. So if you are over 60, here is the easy version. Never reheat a potato that was left out too long. Never keep foil-wrapped baked potatoes sitting on the counter. And never keep re-browning fries, hash browns, or roasted potatoes until they get darker and crispier every time. If you store potatoes, remove foil, cool them quickly, refrigerate them promptly, and reheat them only once. Better still, cook only what you need. And if you have ever thought it's just a potato, what could go wrong? The answer is more than most people think. Now we come to food number 5. And this is the one many health-conscious people least expect: spinach and other nitrate-rich leafy greens. I want to explain this one carefully because this is where online advice often becomes exaggerated. Spinach is a healthy food. Let me say that again, clearly. Spinach is a healthy food. Leafy greens are good for you. They are rich in vitamins, minerals, fiber, and protective plant compounds. I am not telling you to avoid spinach. What I am telling you is that spinach is one of those foods that is best cooked fresh and eaten soon, not endlessly cooked, stored, and reheated. Leafy greens such as spinach naturally contain nitrates. That by itself is not a reason to panic. In fact, nitrates from vegetables can be part of a healthy diet. The problem comes when cooked greens are stored poorly, held too long, and then reheated again. That is where some of the chemistry becomes less favorable, and it is one reason older guidance has often urged caution with reheating nitrate-rich vegetables, particularly for vulnerable people. But even if you set the chemistry aside, there is a very practical reason spinach belongs on this list. Cooked greens break down fast, they lose texture fast, they trap moisture, they are easy to overheat, and once they sit in the fridge for too long, people often reheat them more for convenience than for quality or safety. That is not a great trade. For older adults, the safest approach is simple. Enjoy spinach fresh, or cook only the amount you plan to eat. If you do keep leftovers, cool them quickly and use them promptly. Do not keep reheating them over and over through the week. And if you are ever unsure how long cooked greens have been sitting around, do not take the chance. This one is important because healthy foods sometimes create false confidence. People think, it's spinach, it must be safe. But safety is not decided by whether a food is healthy in theory. Safety is decided by time, temperature, storage, and handling. So when I say spinach belongs on this list, I do not mean spinach is dangerous. I mean reheated, repeatedly handled spinach is not worth the gamble, especially after 60. Now let's bring all 5 foods together, because the bigger lesson here is not just about rice, chicken, eggs, potatoes, or spinach. The bigger lesson is that reheating does not erase bad handling. Heat is not a time machine. If food sat out too long, reheating may not make it safe. If food was cooled badly, reheating may not make it safe. If food has been reheated once already, doing it again is usually a bad idea. If you do not know how long it was in the danger zone, reheating is not a guarantee. That is why USDA emphasizes the basics so strongly. Refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. Use shallow containers for quick cooling. Keep leftovers only a limited number of days, and reheat them to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. These are not small technical details. These are the rules that prevent food poisoning. USDA. And if you are over 60, these rules are even more important. So let me give you the simplest version possible. If you are older than 60, never reheat food you are unsure about. Never reheat food that sat out too long. Never reheat the same leftovers again and again. Never trust smell alone. Never guess on chicken, rice, egg dishes, or foil-wrapped potatoes. And never trade safety for convenience. Instead, do this. Cook smaller portions. Cool leftovers quickly. Store them in shallow containers. Label them if needed. Reheat only the amount you are going to eat. Get it fully hot. And when in doubt, throw it out. That last rule may save you more trouble than any kitchen gadget ever will. I also want to say something many people need to hear. Being frugal is good. Avoiding waste is good. Meal prep can be helpful. But none of those goals should come before safety. Saving one plate of leftovers is never worth risking severe food poisoning, especially if you live alone, take multiple medications, have a chronic health condition, or are caring for an older parent. One of the most common mistakes I see is this. People treat leftovers based on how expensive the food was. If it was a costly meal, they try harder to keep it. But bacteria do not care how much the meal cost. A holiday dinner, a restaurant takeout box, a breakfast casserole, or a plain baked potato can all become unsafe if handled the wrong way. So, from now on, I want you to think differently. Do not ask, can I reheat this? Ask, how long was it out? Ask, how was it cooled? Ask, has it been reheated before? Ask, do I know this food was stored safely? Those are the questions that protect you. And if you remember nothing else from this video, remember the 5 foods on today's list. Rice, because toxins linked to Bacillus cereus can become a problem if patients have a chronic health condition or are caring for an older parent. One of the most common mistakes I see is this. People treat leftovers based on how expensive the food was. If it was a costly meal, they try harder to keep it. But bacteria do not care how much the meal cost. A holiday dinner, a restaurant takeout box, a breakfast casserole, or a plain baked potato can all become unsafe if handled the wrong way. So, from now on, I want you to think differently. Do not ask, "Can I reheat this?" Ask, "How long was it out?" Ask, "How was it cooled?" Ask, "Has it been reheated before?" Ask, "Do I know this food was stored safely?" Those are the questions that protect you. And if you remember nothing else from this video, remember the 5 foods on today's list. Rice, because toxins linked to Bacillus cereus can become a problem if cooked rice sits out too long. Chicken, because uneven reheating and poor storage make it risky fast. Eggs, because egg dishes are easy to mishandle and easy to underheat. Potatoes, especially foil-wrapped baked potatoes, because improper storage can create a serious hazard. And spinach, because healthy foods still need smart handling, and repeatedly reheated leafy greens are simply not the best choice after 60. If this video changed the way you think about leftovers, then it did its job. Because the most dangerous kitchen habits are usually the ones that feel normal. You do not